Hey, welcome back. We're going to jump right into why use a property manager. And just as a reminder, you do want to make sure that you have your resource guide available. If you don't, that's okay. If you do, that gives you a really good guide to kind of follow along with. All right. So why use a property manager? One of my favorite examples to use that really helps landlords understand why it's important to use a property manager is really to correlate it to insurance, right? And a lot of times people don't think about it that way, but your property manager should be your insurance policy for your tenancy, right? They should be your insurance policy for your tenancy. What do I mean by that? When you have homeowners insurance and landlord's insurance, all that good stuff, when you have that, or you have insurance for your car, when you have insurance, it's not for those sunny days, right? It's not because the sun is shining outside, the sky is perfectly blue, and everything is going according to plan. That is not why you have insurance. Same thing for your car insurance. It's not for every time you make it to your destination safely, getting from point A to point B. What your insurance is for is to keep you protected in the time or in the event that something happens, that disaster strikes, okay? So when it comes to your home, if you have, some natural disaster strike, whether it's a hurricane, whether there's, some sort of fire or anything like that, what about when there's a flood at the property, those sort of things? That's when your insurance kicks in, right? Same thing for your car. When you heaven forbid that you do get in some sort of accident, those are the times when you need your insurance policy because you have invested in it continually up until this point. That's when you need your insurance policy to really kick in and to work in overdrive for you, right? But at that point, that's not the time where you want to throw away or throw out thousands and thousands of dollars to rectify a situation. It's the same thing when it comes to property management and having a property manager. I usually tell people we always wish for those sunny tenancies, for the ones that go exactly according to plan. They pay rent on time, they never violate anything. When it comes to their lease agreement, there's no disagreements ever throughout the lease term. There are no legal contentions that come up. And when they move out of the property, they move out completely perfect. Nothing has to be touched and it's ready for the next tenant to move in. We all want those. Right? Those are the type of tenancies that we handle with our eyes closed, right? Those are the perfect ones. And those are the ones that you as a landlord can absolutely handle, right? And I hear that all the time. I just collect the rent and it should be fine. What your property manager does though is really get you prepared for all of those disaster times. And it may not be a complete disaster, but really preventing you. And that's the other beautiful thing about a property manager. They're not just your insurance policy for your tenancy, they are your active insurance policy for your tenancy. So when it comes to your homeowner's insurance, there is no representative at your house 24/7 letting you know, hey, you're leaving the stove on, that's going to cause a problem. Hey, you're putting too much things under the sink, that's probably going to cause a major leak there. Those aren't things that they're doing. But when you have a property manager and they're considered the insurance for your tenancy, those are the things that we're doing. We're calling out red flags. We are readily available and have the knowledge of the landlord-tenant law. So we see things coming before they actually happen, and we know how to prevent them. Some of us have done it on a smaller scale, some of us have done it on a larger scale, but that is the role of your property manager. Okay, so you have an active insurance policy for your tenancy, and that's why you should use a property manager. It's for those times when they don't pay rent on time. What happens? What needs to happen in order for you not to have some legal obligation to your tenant and prolong the process? What happens when they do break something in their lease that it's different than non-payment of rent? What happens if they move in a pet and it hasn't been approved? What can you legally do? What are the guidelines there? What happens if they break something at the property? How do you properly handle that? What happens if they're breaking HOA rules, regulations, violations, those sort of things? What happens if something abruptly changes with their financial situation and now they have to move? How do you handle those? How do you handle things where if they need to be evicted or if it's a mutual termination? How do you know the difference between those two items? Those are all the things that your property manager handles for you. And those are all the things that should be explained to you and that really your property manager is not only your active insurance policy for your tenancy, but they are your guide through the tenancy, right? And I tell people all the time, whenever something comes to, especially with property management, if it ever gets to a legal situation and something does go on where you have to go to court, or you may have to go to court, you're going to need a guide. But say, for instance, if you didn't have a property manager and now all of a sudden, you've made all this money, you've saved all this money supposedly from the cost of management fees, but now all of a sudden you have to talk to an attorney every other day. Those fees tend to rack up a lot faster. Say you're taking to court and you lose. Those fees tend to rack up a lot faster. So with property management and having a property manager, our job is really to decrease your liability. Decrease your liability, decrease the chances that you do have some sort of legal situation arise. And if you got to that place, that's something where you're prepared for it. Okay, so our role as a property manager, and the reason why you want to use a property manager, our role is to prevent things from happening and to prepare you for things that do happen. And then the third thing that I don't necessarily have there, but the third thing is to have you prevail. Okay, so our role as a property manager is to make sure we prevent, prepare, and prevail. Prevent, prepare, and prevail. So we are to prevent anything and everything possible. We are to prepare you when something does happen, because there are things that are inevitable. And then we are to prevail. That means we have your documentation in place, the communication has been in line, and all of those things have happened. One of the things before we kind of wrap this portion up, but I sat down with some local attorneys here in the area, and I said, and because we offer these for rent by owner packages, I want it to be a resource to landlords in general, right? And I said, what would you tell a landlord who is contemplating and who is considering managing the property on their own? What would you tell them? And the response that I seem to get over and over and over again is, we would tell them, just don't do it. Don't do it, right? And I said, okay, you'll tell them don't do it, but why is that? One of the things for Alachua County especially, and if you're in a different county, we'll have to look up, unique circumstances and unique information to your county specifically. But for Alachua County, they said that Alachua County is actually more resident heavy when it comes to legal cases, meaning that it is more likely that a resident is going to prevail in some sort of legal dispute or legal thing in Alachua County if the landlord doesn't have everything in line that they need to. Now, I have had one situation where I actually did have to go to court for a resident who moved out of the property. They weren't necessarily evicted. It was a mutual termination situation, but it had to run through the courts just like an eviction pretty much. And when we went to court, the judge is like, hey, what's going on? And we actually won that case because we had the documentation, we had the communication, we were already in conversation with our attorneys to know, okay, hey, here's all the red flags that we see. What do we need to have prepared in the event that this has to go further? And it did go further. We were prepared, and therefore we prevailed.